Welcome back to Boat Talks with Sophia Sojourn. We are continuing our conversation with Pastor John Featherston from Serenity Church. Today we get to talk about his aspirations and desires and things that he wants to see happening to make the church a safer and better place for our world. Welcome back to episode 1, part 2 of Boat Talks. I'm Laura Beth, and this is my guest, John Featherston, pastor of Serenity Church. And last week we kind of talked about your coming face to face with your addictions.
Yes.
And in your service of the church. Today I kind of want to get to your objectives and your aspirations for the church, and talk about kind of the path that you took from there to here, where we are now, and where I know you as the pastor of Serenity Church.
Okay.
So that is a time span that covered 20 years?
19 years.
19 years.
Yeah.
Okay. 19 years, 3 different churches, including the one that you started in.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay. All right, so you stand in front of them and you say, I have this problem.
That didn't go well.
I can't imagine.
No kidding. I was 6 months clean and sober before I finally decided to tell the church what I was dealing with. I knew there was probably going to be a great price to pay, and they did make me pay a great price. Obviously, that was the last time I ever stood in that pulpit. They spent several months kind of putting me through the ringer before they finally decided just to throw me out.
Now, this was the pulpit that you had aspired at one point. You said, by the time I'm 40.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and you're not 40
and
yet.
way before I was 40, I was in there, out of there, gone, and through.
Okay.
Early in my recovery, in the first 30 days or so, I came home from a meeting, and I went to a meeting every day, twice most days. And came home from a meeting late at night, and I sat down with my wife, and I told her, I said, there is something so wrong about all this. I said, I get up every morning and I put on a suit and a tie and get in my car and go to my big office in the big church on the north side of town and go do church. And every night I go over to a smoke-filled warehouse over here on the edge of our neighborhood and sit down in a room full of drunks and junkies to be loved and encouraged and accepted and stood by and never for a heartbeat judged for who I was or what I was not. And I said, what is wrong with this? And I said, someday, if God will just get me out of this hole I'm in, if He will just pull me out of this mess, someday I would love to take all that sweet power and those very real answers that are happening in that warehouse and Christ and what He really intended for His fellowships to be, and put it all in a blender and pour it out. And I told her, I said, I think if I ever get to do that, I'm going to call it Serenity Church. And this was in 1987. I'd call it Serenity Church because all the 12-step fellowships either open or close or both by all praying out loud together the Serenity Prayer. And so that way my people would know it's for us.
Mm.
It was 19 years later, and 2 other churches. Before it was crystal clear that God had finally put all of the pieces in place, and that He was expecting me now to keep my promise and give birth to a completely new thing. Had no idea how to go about that or what it was going to look like. I had been pastoring for almost 10 years, a church in the North Dallas suburbs where I was at the time. And decided initially I thought it was supposed to be a ministry of that church.
Okay.
We were going to do on Saturday night something very specific for my people in the recovery community, and then do church as we knew church on Sunday. That was probably naive on my part because I was in a very loving and, for where we come from, very open fellowship of the denomination of my youth. But obviously there were still great constraints within that structure.
Sure, and you're blending two ideas.
Not apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Something much more.
Yeah, apples and cinder blocks.
There you go.
Yes.
Something like
Yeah.
that. And I got up and I explained to them. And I thought after 10 years of preaching grace and freedom to those folks, they were ready to stretch, you know. And I got up and I said, we're going to do something completely different on Saturday night. We're going to bring Christ and speak Christ to the recovery community, of which there are many thousands of people within minutes of where we're sitting. And we're going to have a place, the recovery fellowships rightly, and I don't argue the point, rightly do not identify our higher power. Mm-hmm. And so many people in those fellowships are frantic for an identity for their higher power. And I said, we're going to introduce Christ as a higher power in their recovery, and do a new kind of church within this place here, where we can speak fluent recovery and speak fluent Christ. Fortunately, I happen to be bilingual. You know.
Excellent. There's some unique things going on at Serenity, and we'll get to more of that in a minute. But so, what were some of the biggest objections? I mean, so then you have this traditional church.
Oh yeah.
On Saturday or Sunday morning, and we still meet on Saturday night. And somebody told me early on, we meet Saturday night because our people don't struggle Sunday morning.
Big time.
Yeah.
And frankly, we meet on
that's right.
We meet on Saturday nights because 90% of church real estate is locked and dark on Saturday night. Yeah. We will never ever be a fellowship that wants or could afford to maintain a church facility of our own. Yeah. We rent space from people with closed buildings on Saturday nights.
There's a win-win.
And Saturday night is the primary problem for people like me. Yeah. So it's exactly when we should be. So I get up on Sunday morning and I announce we're going to do a new thing to bring Christ to a new group of people that are over 90% unchurched. The church has not been a friend to them. They're mostly churchophobic.
Yes.
And so, with good reason, totally. And I said, we're going to speak Christ in the language of their fellowship. And I speak that language after 20 years of speaking it every day.
Yes.
And it's going to look different than what we look like on Sundays. And told them several ways it would be different, but the one that exploded in our face right off the bat, the tradition of the fellowship I come from is that women have no voice. To the point that in most of the churches that I come from, if a woman in the children's ministry needed an announcement made on Sunday morning, she would have to write it down and find somebody with a penis who could get up and read her announcement to the church.
So there's a filter on the platform that says no boobs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I said, we're not going to do this new thing like that. I said, there are these women, these black belt ninja recovery women, whose experience and strength and hope is treasured, rightly treasured in that community. We are not going to go and welcome those people into this new thing we're doing and saying, welcome to this, it's for you, but you've got to shut up and keep your mouth closed until you leave the building because you don't have a penis. I said, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That was not well received.
Yeah.
In the 5 months from the time I announced that we were going to start this thing 5 months later, a third of that church had left.
Just because of the idea.
The concept. I told them, I said, you don't have to come see this happen. It's going to be on a different day.
Yeah.
But literally the concept that we would allow a woman to express her recovery or her faith out loud in that building was so objectionable that a great percentage of our people left. It became clear early that we would have to move this new thing into neutral zone territory.
Yeah.
It couldn't happen there.
Yeah. So obviously several issues then with that church. You did find a space, and you've been in a few spaces.
Yes.
From till where I found you.
Right.
And I want to talk about my coming to the church in a minute. But one of the things you and I talked about early on, as I was recovering from my evangelical background,
sure,
I something that you all do frequently that really rubbed me wrong, and I had to get my head around, was quoting from the Big Book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised in this sola scriptura
you and me
world.
Talk to me.
And so the Bible and nothing, and I've adopted this idea that all truth is God's truth, all Scripture is true, but not all truth is in Scripture.
Yes.
The Big Book is one of those
perfect example
truths.
Of what you just said.
Yes.
I truly believe that the Spirit inspired the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. Now, I would have had a heart attack speaking those words in earlier chapters.
Sure, yeah.
And
well, first of all, he was retired.
And called you an unspeakable heretic if you had said it. I know.
Yeah.
Anywhere that truth is spoken, it's from the Spirit.
Mm.
And I believe, I can't find a word in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that does not jive completely with what I understand Christ's truth to be. Mm. And so therefore, when I stand up to preach to our congregation, I'll quote the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous in one breath, and in the very next heartbeat, quote the Apostle Paul. Yeah. They don't contradict each other. And they really, the folks I'm talking to, need to hear truth in the language they heard it in their home group the night before.
And that, when we had that conversation earlier, that's what resonated with me.
Yeah.
Is that we talk about other recovery initiatives that are kind of coming the other direction, where they're based out of a traditional church, bringing recovery concepts to the church, and the opposite thing happens.
Yeah.
They speak recovery in church language.
Exactly.
You were re-speaking church
in recovery language.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what we couldn't find. We were finding people with 12-step ministries who were adapting all things recovery into Bibleness, to churchiosity.
Yes.
Church language.
Yes. Which has its place.
Wonderfully.
Yeah.
And we speak both at Serenity Church. I can preach expiations and propitiations, but how did that look in my 4-step inventory?
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm bilingual,
Yes.
And so I think my job is to take the truth of Christ and speak it in the language that they hear it in their home group, whatever that fellowship may be.
Yeah. So last April, I am in the throes of my deconstruction and reconstruction, what I describe now as affirming my identity and transitioning my faith. Sure. And I'm looking for a church home, and somebody says, well, my friend Lori goes to this church. Why don't I think it might be a place for you. So I walk in, and there's puffs of vapor coming up all over the place.
We're a vape-friendly church.
Your bass player and associate pastor has more ink than most of my theology books all over him.
And a lot of hair.
Front
and back.
Yes, yeah. What is it about that church, though, that it's not an LGBT church.
No.
Okay, it's not a church that's specifically geared toward that community. No. But I walk in as a trans woman, and nobody bats an eye. Mm-mm. Not that I could see.
Yeah.
They say, okay.
Okay. Welcome home.
Worship with us. Yeah. And not only
be a part
worship
of
with
this,
us, but dive in. What creates that?
I think what you were sensing is what I have referred to at Serenity Church as being the last house on the street. Mm. Our mission is a place of complete, non-judged welcome for all of the people who have been refused all the other places, who have knocked on the other doors and were found not welcome. Mm. We're the last house on the street. We're the place for me and you and folks like us who were not welcome in the other places. And so all of us came with wounds and baggage and hurts and stories and And all of us have that in common. And so we don't have time or the patience to pretend we don't. Like we said on the last episode, I get up and announce myself to be a recovering addict alcoholic every time I preach. I don't have time to pretend that I'm somebody I'm not. It's not our job to judge. I have not been added, and I keep looking for the letter in the mail, but I have not been added to the Judgment Day Advisory Committee. You know?
The Trinity has not become
They have not asked.
quadlateral.
They have not asked for my assistance in that process.
Yeah.
And so in the meantime, my job is to bear hug and welcome in the door and find a place for whoever God sends our way. He sent you.
He did.
Clearly he did.
I agree.
We knew it when you walked through the door. We believe that everyone who finds their way through that door, and everybody has a story just as crazy as yours. How on earth did you find us?
That's a pretty high bar.
Really?
Just saying.
How on earth do you find this group of people on a Saturday night in a rented space in a North Dallas burb?
Yeah.
We say and believe everybody who walked through that door was brought by God there.
Mm-hmm.
How dare we do anything but completely embrace the one He sent through that door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I sense, and from our conversations and my conversations, because with some other people, and I've had a chance to talk to people about their reactions that day and stuff, but there is a sense of it's humility because of their own journey and gratitude.
I would say those two things.
Yeah.
There is a fierce gratitude in that room. The recovery community, and it's hard to get exact numbers. The best statistics I've been able to pull is somewhere in the world there are 20 million people in some form, some fellowship of 12-step recovery community. 20 million.
The concept of anonymity makes those statistics challenging.
And that's
the
why
research on them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But there are many millions any way you want to go.
Exactly.
And there are many thousands within minutes of where Serenity Church meets.
Yeah.
My experience through 20 years of deep involvement in that community is that it would be probably well over 90% unchurched. These are people looking for an identity for their higher power. Does he have a name?
Right.
Did he say anything else? And but they're not welcome in church to find any answers there.
Right.
We believe that Christ is our higher power. He is an unrecognizable somebody to the one that I was raised with. But that's the higher power that we welcome you with. And welcome you is the key word.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Good. Well, it's a great place to be. It's my new spiritual home, and for great reason.
And we're glad to have you.
And I sense that.
Yeah.
I feel that very much. So, okay, that's going to wrap us up for part 2. We've got 3 and 4 to go, which are going to be fun and exciting. Still more to come. But thanks for, again, being my guinea pig.
I'm glad to do it.
And managing some technical challenges, but we're
gonna get through this.
Yes,
all right.
It's worth the journey.
You bet.
We'll be back. I hope you've enjoyed our first 2 parts so far. Next week we will continue with part 3. Well, I will ask John our 4 magic questions. Actually, there's nothing magic about them. They're just the same questions that we're going to ask every guest throughout this season of episodes. And don't forget to check out our blog, sophiasojourn.com. And don't forget to look for my upcoming book, Shattering Masks, coming out very soon. I'll keep you posted. Thanks. Have a great week.